It's not girls, is it? It's
Girls.
Girls.
The vowels are very different in the northwest than they are in the east.
Right, I'll get my diagram.
Hello and welcome to Audiovisual Cultures, the podcast exploring arts and culture production. I'm Paula Blair. This is part 2 of our double episode in which Dr Andrew Shail and I closely analyse and observe episode 1 of the Channel 4 comedy Derry Girls. Many thanks to our members at patreon.com/AV Cultures for your continued support. We could really use a lot more, so please do listen to the end for details on ways to fund this podcast, which is free to access but not to make, and for ways to get in touch. For now, do enjoy the Derry Girls Nerd Fest.
I think we got to about on Friday in the first meeting of Team Jackson, which is my Friday 11am seminar group. I will get one of them to tweet Saoirse Monica Jackson and say, we're having a seminar group that's named after you. We've got it paused roughly where we finished in the last session. I just wanted to point out that just look at Saoirse Monica Jackson's face.
Her beak.
She has the funniest face.
She has proper comedy physique, I think. She's really physically expressive and funny.
We call it clowning, but not in the use where it means somebody goofing. Clowning where somebody's very carefully playing a part, which is funny just because it's large and pantomimic.
But also, I mean, you've got Claire's doing angsty Claire, and James doing I'm so confused and stressed. And the big sister of the wee girl that they've threatened is staring daggers at them. There's quite a lot going on.
Picking up where we left off the other day, which was at about the 13-minute mark. And of course we have an ad break there, and we have a reprise of the Cranberries' Dreams again, so that is informally made to be the theme tune. Not necessarily of the series, but of the episode at least.
I feel like it bookends the first series, doesn't it? It comes back again at the very end. Or maybe I'm misremembering.
They do bring the Cranberries back at the end of the series,
song.
but I think it's their other big upbeat song.
Not Zombies, but the other one that they did.
Linger? So we're at about 13:30-ish, 13:29-ish. Okay, so 13:29 we have an ad break, which is a very important part of any piece of telly because structure is determined by a box of limitations in which you have to work, which includes advertising. That's another reference, isn't it? That your average
Bobby Sands
person who knows nothing about Northern Ireland will just fly past them. So why is it that Michelle says it to Claire? Claire, who's clutching a book which has got photographs of African children on it. Although actually, maybe she means that Claire is Bobby Sands because Bobby Sands is
she's on
not eating anything.
And she's on a fast.
I think Lisa McGee thought, how can I pile in the Derry specific or the Northern Ireland specific references?
It feels like it's gone from, right, I want these phrases, I want these colloquialisms, I want these Ulsterisms, I want these references to Northern Irishy, Ulstery things. How can I get there in the least clunky way? While also building characterisation. Claire's she wants to be socially aware, but she's also quite hungry. Starvo, we would say, back home. So there you go. She's equating her to a hunger striker.
And that would be completely lost on 90% of people in the UK, wouldn't it, watching this?
Well, people in Britain, they're most likely to have heard of Bobby Sands because that's the only person to do with anything to do with Irish republicanism that most British people can name. This is a few years after Hunger coming out, which was really widely seen. So this is a reference that's actually culturally quite to the fore in the past 10 years as well, I would argue.
I must admit that not having seen Hunger and being English, I didn't know who Bobby Sands was until I met you.
You're a bit too young actually, because it was 1981, so 80-81 that winter.
Did you just call me young, Dr. Blair?
I said you're too young for this reference.
Yeah, but in a very specific situation, I can't.
Do you need a win?
Today.
Is it today?
A tiny one will do.
You're young for this.
Woohoo.
You're a Wayne.
But maybe here's a relevant point. Lisa McGee's not, right? Lisa McGee
but
knows
if you
about
come from there, and if you've grown up in parts of the country where there are murals everywhere of this man, because he is the face. He is literally the face of the Republican movement.
When we were in Derry, we did see that.
Yeah,
that
we
particular
saw
mural.
murals
Yeah.
of him. There's murals of him all over West Belfast. There are murals of him in Derry as well. I mean, in Derry, not so much, but he is there. He is still, because it is individualised in him.
And even Michelle here, who says bring Bobby Sands, would have been a baby when Bobby Sands went on hunger strike.
Yeah, but it would be something.
It's baked into the cultural memory.
It's
right?
just part of the cultural memory. When I'm saying that you're too young for this reference, your mum and dad, for example, know who Bobby Sands is because they saw the whole coverage on the news. The 66 days of his hunger strike they saw on the news.
Right.
People 10 years older than you, for example, I mean, even your older brother might just about be old enough to vaguely remember those bulletins. That's how Steve McQueen, the filmmaker, even knew about that. It was because when he was a child growing up in London, he saw this happening on the news every day.
We should WhatsApp my folks.
Do you want to verify my claim?
Yeah, I don't trust you.
It's an example, but people around their ages are likely to have heard of them.
Yeah.
And this is a programme that is for young people, but it's nostalgic for a past, and it's a past where people my age and older will be aware of, and because it's not just the girls themselves, it's their parents and their grandparents in it. It's intergenerational, so it's not exclusive to, it is about girls and these teenagers at the forefront, but it's intergenerational and nobody's really excluded because of that.
I do wonder if the cast of Derry Girls had to have it explained to them, but
Not
I suppose
necessarily.
you'd know about it.
They would know, plus, I mean, they've all been working long enough in television, mostly. Again, a lot of them actually are a lot older than their characters. They maybe will have seen or at least know of films like Hunger. And that's not the only film about hunger strikes. There are many.
Yeah.
And there are many things that are shown on television over there. And like I say, the murals everywhere. And there will be some of that in the south as well. It's mostly in the north, but there'll be a bit in parts of the south where some of them have grown up.
I'm just looking at how old Saoirse Monica Jackson is, and she was born in 1993, so would have been about 23 when this, 24ish when this was being filmed. So she's playing somebody who's 8 years younger than her.
That's not so bad. I mean,
That's the
she's
way it
one of
rolls,
the
I guess.
younger members of the cast. Nicola Coughlan, who plays Claire, is closer to my age. She's in her early 30s, I think.
You just call yourself old, Dr. Blair.
I am quite old.
You're working well.
I am fantastically old.
On with press.
I'm a youngish fella.
That is one of the great little touches on this. Of just, you don't need to use his name.
It's funny because these are all from a very overtly Catholic background, and yet the names are actually quite, I mean, Orla and Erin, but in East Belfast even you get the odd Erin, but Claire and Michelle, I suppose they're quite neutral names and that anybody could have them, but I lost count of how many Claires and Michelles were in my school when I was this age. But then it's actually in the surnames, so you've got surnames like Devlin, and I wonder, is that a reference to Bernadette Devlin McCalliskey, or...
I mean, the name McCool, I think, is a way
McCool,
of going,
that's-
you can't get more Irish than that.
Yeah, you can't, and I mean, and that's part of folklore, Finn McCool.
So Orla is a national folkloric mythic hero.
Yeah, it'd be interesting where her actually digging into that, just to drill down on that a little bit, because we know nothing about her father. We don't know if that's her mother's maiden name, because we never hear Grandpa Joe's name, I don't think.
Right,
So we don't know if that's that family's name, or it's her unknown father's name.
Yes.
And so there's this mythical, Finn McCool is a mythical giant.
She's the offspring of either her spontaneously reproducing mum or her mum and some mythical giant. This is finely
There's
wrought.
something about that.
I just want to point out that I'm a big stickler for cinematography, and in this shot, the camera's just ever so slightly wobbling from left to right. It's framed so that the dado rail behind them is violating the rule of thirds. It's actually almost exactly in the middle of the screen, a little bit above the middle of the screen. And so it looks a little bit staged, and yet the camera's just slightly wobbling from left to right, like somebody decided, we're going to create just this little frisson of it's an observational documentary rather than it's fiction.
One of the schoolgirls being in the IRA. I mean, that's so close to home in a way. When I was at school, there were so many girls with familial connections to loyalist paramilitaries. And this is just, again, it's very normal. I was bullied at school and nothing was ever done to the bullies because their dads were in the UVF or whatever it was. There are just so many. I'm not going to list them all because I'll just be saying letters at you. But
Do it.
around where I grew up, there was the UVF, the LVF, the UDA, the LFF. Yeah, Loyalist Freedom Fighters. There were quite a lot of groups and they were all fighting with each other because they were all dealing drugs in each other's patches.
Let's pause for a moment on this composition where we can see little Dylan. When I say little, he's not little.
Wee English
The
fella.
wee English Dylan. We see Dylan when he's framed, he's just talking to the girls and he's saying, so obviously since there are no male toilets, I should just use the girls' toilets. And they're about to say, no, you pervert. But it's framed so that he's saying this completely sensible thing of, well, you know, practicality dictates that since people have to go to the toilet, I obviously need to use the girls' toilet. So he's doing something completely sensible. But the framing is, he's shoved over to the left side of the frame, looking into off-screen space.
It's low angle.
So, yeah, it's a bit low angle so we can see the ceiling. Always ask, well, can I see the ceiling? And that just makes everything feel a bit wrong. He's kind of crammed up to the edge of the frame. Usually when someone's looking off into off-screen space left, you put them on the right side of the frame. But now it just looks like he's looking up against a brick wall.
Yeah.
So that foreshadows the fact that he's going to get an answer which is just utterly
Gross.
counter to the sensible answer.
There's quite a lot of shadows cast. The fluorescent lighting that's on the ceiling of the school corridor, and then there's shadowing on his face and there's shadowing over his eyes that make him look a tiny bit sinister in that freeze frame, actually.
Well, he's also saying the most innocuous thing and
Yeah, I do
looking
love
extremely
him.
harmless.
I think the school scenes were filmed in Hunter House School in Belfast.
And you mentioned when we were watching a later episode in Series 2 that they were in the Strand.
In East Belfast, yeah.
And so clearly there's a bit of pinging back and forth between Derry and Belfast.
Yeah, it's mostly the external locations that are in Derry,
Mm.
and most of the rest of it's actually Belfast
So
and surrounding areas.
Do you, like, secretly, in the privacy of your own head, call it Belfast Girls?
I think it's just a bone of contention because it doesn't bother me because I understand the production context and there's more studio space, for example. I think the house that is used for it, I think that's an actual house. It's not a studio. That's Erin and Orla's home. I think it's an actual house, but then the street where they filmed the exteriors is a different street because I'm just looking into locations where things are filmed at the minute. It's a strange one because I think there's just tension between the two cities quite a bit anyway, so I think it's a real bone of contention that this is supposed to be Derry, but a lot of it's Belfast, and I think the Derry people don't really like that very much, but nobody else is terribly bothered because it's just such a great show and it's been so important and it's been received so well everywhere else that that's really all that matters, I think.
Remember that episode we did on London Irish?
Yeah.
We basically said that this was a necessary precursor to Derry Girls because it was the process of refining a comic tone that was essential before creating something that was this
Yeah, it was almost
sharp
like draft work,
and
yeah.
sweet. Anyway, so we've done about 8 seconds. What I just wanted to point out is that James is just going to be constantly coming up against the oddness of his surroundings.
Yeah.
He's the proxy character for most viewers.
That's
of
it. That's it exactly. He is the way in. Like, it's such a clever way of doing it. You know, it's a Channel 4 comedy. This is the first episode. People meet me and hear me speaking here in England, and it's just like, we are from different worlds. What is this crazy place you grew up in, you know, that I get? And the things that I've realised seemed normal to me were not normal at all in the most of the rest of the country I come from. It's just culturally there's just such a massive difference, and to see that through the eyes of a teenage boy, especially in this otherwise homosocial world of girls, is quite fascinating.
And that he's a boy in a world of girls. He's making that funny noise, and that just he's framed like this. It's layer after layer after layer of saying
He's other.
he's on another planet.
He's just got utter confusion because it's like that. I mean, I know so many people who have moved to Northern Ireland for work, for example, who come from England, and they're like, what? So if I have a crisis pregnancy, I can't do anything about that? Or what is going on here politically?
There's a legislative assembly, but there isn't a legislative. That was a brilliant little moment where Louisa Harland, without being the central character in the frame, off to the left of the frame.
She's always doing something.
Yeah, just silence it for a moment and we'll just watch what she does. We'll go back a bit and we'll just see that
staring off into
Claire's,
space.
yes. So Claire's having a moment of freaking out. She's like, my brain sugar is dangerously low. She grabs Michelle and Erin, so she grabs Jamie Lee and Saoirse Monica. Hyphenated first names. They're difficult to handle. And then off in the left of the frame, just staring off into space, Louisa Harlan just, at one point, she picks up her right hand. She just lifts it up to her face, looks at it, shakes her head, and puts it back down again. And I think it's got something to do with the fact she's wearing one of those edible bracelets that we all wore when we were her age. And she just perhaps spontaneously does
clever.
it. They've all got a clown
Clever.
set up. And I suppose that's part of the comedy here is just put 5 clowns together.
I think if you went through and just decided on a character you were going to follow, you could just take out so much.
The one where Ola's doing step aerobics.
Oh my God.
And she's overdoing it.
That
and
is her time to shine.
James just asks her a question. She goes, I have had it with you, James. With your pecking and your pecking. Just because she's a bit tired.
She's a bit tired from doing so much step aerobics. But is there a build up to that throughout the whole series? Does he constantly ask questions and she's fed up? Because you see, the thing is that he's somebody asking loads of questions in a place where you do not ask questions. That is not safe. Everybody's trained to be very guarded because everybody's surveilling everybody. And if you're asking too many questions, even if they're genuine, like that's why I get stressed out when people question me all the time, because I'm like, what are you asking me questions for? And that's genuine because, you know, I grew up in a place where you're wary of people who ask lots of questions.
So when I say, how you doing? Is that why you curl up in a
How
ball?
you doing is a bit different. That's just part of saying hello to me. Maybe it's this, it's like he's genuinely confused and flummoxed and he's bewildered. He's walking around and this constant, his body language just says, I am a lost boy the whole time. And they're so confident in their identities and who they are and what they're doing and what their role is in this dynamic, and he just hasn't got a clue yet.
Interestingly, when they're shooting Jamie, I've gone back a bit again. When they're shooting James looking at them, he's standing just inside the doorway, but
On the threshold.
Yeah, but on the counter coverage, he's actually well past the doorway. So they moved him a little bit when they shot this twice. And then fantastic editing decision when the door's about to open.
You don't know whether to, because you see this here, you can see there's almost like a doorway there.
Yeah, so he's standing inside the corridor rather than in the doorway that he was in the...
Yeah, but it's probably significant that when he's in his own shot, he's in a threshold space. He's not in, he's not out.
Whereas if they would have put him in the doorway in this shot, he'd be covering them up. So a bit of cheating there. They then edit to a shot where we can then have that reveal of the door in the background opening. We don't even see Sister Michael open it.
And this outburst from Claire was the key marketing, wasn't it?
Yeah.
This was in the very first trailer where you see this outburst of we have to stick together, and then immediately she's throwing everybody under the bus and exonerating herself. It's set up that she's, I am mad with hunger type thing, because she hasn't eaten since her breakfast.
She's good lad. We need to do a bit of timing here because that midway conversation, it ends at about 14 minutes 28ish when they're summoned to Sister Michael's office. Then there's the little bit of outside office, and then they get brought in at about 15:09.
And Sister Michael says to Orla, you might want to think about wising up, and she looks at her bracelet again.
And again goes to have a bit of bracelet.
It's like, because she wants comfort on a sweetie.
I'm 15.
I'm 15.
Yeah, all of this is Lisa McGee splitting herself off into 5 different people.
This is good because this is the first of the closer encounters with Sister Michael and the girls. And just a reminder, James is included every time we say the girls. He is one of the Derry Girls, and that is absolutely confirmed at the end of season 2.
When he self-identifies as a Derry Girl.
One of the Derry Girls. We've been introduced to Sister Michael as herself in the assembly and how she deals with just everyone. But this is the start of a really special dynamic, a special relationship she's going to build with this particular group of kids.
It will be a antagonistic relationship episode after episode after episode until something like the 5th episode of the second series.
I mean, I feel like antagonism is a bit strong. Like, I feel like she's their most common interlocutor. It's not like she's an adversary. It's not as strong as that. She's their foil almost in a way. But then there's affection there too.
So, girls.
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 Girls?
Girls. Like, I'm not an authority. Like, I'm a Belfastian. I mean, I should not be attempting a Derry accent.
You colonial oppressor.
Look,
That's your intro.
It's not the colonial thing. I'll tell you what it is. It's because Derry's still a wee bit sore that as the lore goes, Derry was a city when Belfast was still a bog.
I suppose be next to the sea.
I'm sorry,
and
but
you'll become the capital of the region.
the Industrial Revolution was not my fault. That's what made Belfast, was all the factories that ended up there on the River Lagan.
Let's make our next project. It would just be a count of how many times one of the characters says Girls. Because I think, Girls. I think that Erin says it quite a few times and Michelle says it quite a few times. Lisa McGee's programmed it into a...
In Belfast,
character.
it's girls. It's more guttural. Girls. Good. It's a G-U. Girls.
Go.
Girls. We say our R's.
Yeah. You say your L's as well. You don't say many other sounds, but you do say your R's and your L's. Whereas, if you get a Londoner to say it, it would just be go.
Go.
It's like they're saying gow.
It's
just a gow.
Pushing air out of your lungs while your mouth makes a weird shape, mate.
Oh.
You don't say your T's or any of it. And that is clearly not the voice of a girl from Derry.
Say it nothing.
Nothing. I can't verify how a girl who spent all of 11 years of her life in Derry, she sounds like broad Belfast, trying to do Derry to me.
Say nothing.
This girl playing Tina. I say nothing.
The fact that they've put little tiny bows in her hair
Yeah, they
is
made her look quite cute.
brilliant.
Yeah, she's a cute wee 11-year-old.
And this moment which we happen to have paused it upon where Sister Michael says that you're intimidated and she smiles and then she goes, oh, you're serious? No, I'm not intimidated by them. It's quite fun because that's the only time that she's going to make that face during this entire episode, because the rest of the time she goes...
Scowling. And see how this... I don't even know the actress's name here. She's doing so much with her mouth.
Yeah.
She's doing so many big shapes with her mouth, and the expression and the sass, the way she holds her body and shifts her head and stuff. Oh, you're being serious. Because that is how we do it. It's
way too much movement of head and face.
Bodily way of speaking, especially when you're given sass. Oh, is it now? What are you giving it? It's a full body sass.
Which may be why getting all these characters to become clown versions of their teenage selves is quite easy. Because the clown is quite physical. Okay, and we're in detention at... This is the end straight, isn't it? We're in detention at something like 16 minutes and 59 seconds.
Poor James. He's going through something that's just... Him being English, I mean, he's Irish Catholic who's been brought up in London. He is London Irish, but he's a boy. He's basically the patriarchy, not the patriarchy in this, isn't he? And it's just this basic human need to go to the toilet is being denied him. You think of all the rights that are being denied. We've already, very early on in this episode, had a jibe about abortion. And in the last episode of this series, Claire comes out. She's gay. She has no rights. She still has no rights. None of these people have rights in 2019. Hopefully by the end of October that will be different. But as of right now, when we are doing this screening and recording, these people do not have rights. Women, people who need abortions, people who need that kind of healthcare, people who happen to be interested in people who have similar things to them in their pants. They're not allowed to do stuff. It's just really interesting that this is flipped on its head so that, scare quotes, English colonial oppressor, or the cipher for him, the cipher for the patriarchy, has this basic human need and right stripped away from him.
Right, yeah. So it's a tiny little bit of pretend revenge.
A bit, yeah, but it's misdirected because it's this innocent child who has done nothing wrong to anyone ever.
And I suppose if you're going to make a political statement with a piece of fiction, then pushing it several layers down beneath the surface and making it just that there's this vague sense of misdirected revenge is, I suppose, quite an effective way of doing that.
I suppose it's also, there's this white English dude who has gone from having everything to having basically nothing in the space of a day, but actually that's a normal scenario for all of the people that he's suddenly surrounded by.
Actually, yeah, we're going to find out in about 3 minutes that his mum's gone back to England and just left him.
She's abandoned him. I mean, this is a guy who's just lost everything. Like, he thought he was there temporarily, or his mum was staying. They've enrolled him in this school, but maybe he thought that was just temporary while they were there, or or they were all going to stay and whatever. Yeah, this is such a shock, and that everybody's so unfeeling about that. But it's actually more a case of they're just not capable of showing true emotion. I mean, it's interesting because the only person who ever mentions love in any way is Jerry, who's from the south.
We're in love.
And because we're in love, and it's even quite guarded and not quite sure. Because
actually, when we love each other.
we love each other, and it's a bit. He is slightly terrified when he says that, because I think Mary is genuinely terrifying. She is a proper Ulster ma.
And of course, starting off out of focus because this
episode.
this cinematic
It is cinematic.
episode
Yeah.
uses Shail out of the field.
I wonder what that said there.
It's like,
I think it might have been Irish on the blackboard.
we're going to do this.
I'm not very advanced in my learning of Irish, so I'm not going to know what it said.
It's out of focus.
Be interesting to look at that. Shall I look it up quickly?
Yeah. Also, I just wanted to point out that...
Can you put it on again?
Yeah, okay.
So I can actually read it.
Did you just burn me?
Tiny bit burned you. I think you just made an assumption that my memory's better than it actually is.
You just burned yourself?
I don't need to.
You've got third-degree metaphorical burns all over your body.
Self-inflicted. I can't quite see that one, but let's try.
Have you got Gaelic characters on your touchpad?
It's on any of these keypads. If you just hold them down, you can get the special characters up. You should have it on your thing as well.
Oh yeah, I had to download French, for example, to do a bit of French
Yeah.
language learning, and you have to transfer to French.
Does that say Kalini? I'm not quite sure that says Kalini, but that means girls.
Oh yeah, it does it even with English.
Mm-hmm.
With UK English, there's no need for me to download the French.
No, if you just hold the letter down. I'm going to try translate. B.
Be quiet, girls.
Maybe.
C-I-U-N.
C-I.
You with an accent over it?
Be silent, you're right. I haven't learned this yet. I am learning Irish, but I haven't got this far yet. I think that's Kalini, which I think is girls. I haven't seen it with an H before though. Queer girls? That's come up as queer girls when you put the whole phrase in. That's interesting. So it could be quiet girls, but also possibly laced with queer girls. Maybe foreshadowing
And this shot of Sister Declan
on the blackboard.
with the blackboard out of focus in the background and all this out of focus elements in the foreground as well. It means that the only stuff that's in focus is her and a hand cranked pencil sharpener. Okay, I have a special place in my heart for hand cranked pencil sharpeners, right? Because I spent most of my PhD in a room which was pencils only, and you'd have a little hand cranked pencil sharpener to go and sharpen your pencil, and I'd wear out a pencil a month at least. That was the only noise that occurred, apart from sniffing. There was lots of sniffing because it was a temperature controlled room.
Sniffing. Yeah. Nobody ever has tissues.
Little slightly wobbly shots. Something that hits me. Again, Saoirse Monica Jackson going, I know my face is funny. I'm going to inhale my own chin. Something about comedy is that sometimes, in order for a character to just be told by another character that they're being silly, the other character just momentarily needs to just become not a clown. People need to kind of flick back and forth between being clowns and being straight people. So when Michelle says, Christ, Claire, you've basically just skipped lunch, Claire's suddenly the sober person in the room. But then in 2 minutes, she's going to stop being the sober person in the room because she needs to do her clown thing of telling James to shut up. And again, just like we had with James before, we got Saoirse Monica Jackson looking off to the left, even though she's on the left of the frame. That slight air of everything being a little bit wrong, because of course she's about to say that it better not be in my diary.
It's funny to try and see bits of it because Erin's done some sort of collage on the front of it as well. Erin's diary.
Let's take a look at that. And that was Saoirse Monica Jackson saying that entire thing without moving her teeth apart. You'd better not about my diary to school.
Threat. It's like a growling dog, isn't it?
I've finally got it. I've nailed how to do it. Make no sounds anywhere but up your nose.
Hey boy.
And don't move your teeth apart.
It can be quite guttural. It comes from your throat.
I'm going to grab your fuse. And
see, you're getting it. You're doing it better now.
There's Erin's diary. Yeah. And you had a diary like that when you were her age.
Not quite like that. I did write in a diary, but I didn't stick stuff on it like that.
We got this thing happening in the rough foreground between Erin and Ola, but Claire, who's played by
Nicola Coughlan,
she's not gonna just be the person in the background, is it? She's gonna do a bit of action.
Always acting, aren't they? They're always doing something. Like she's sort of doing fainting motions and feeling a bit ill and queasy.
That's quite a typical shot for this series, isn't it? Again, we've gone back. Typical shot with one character on their own. everything except for them is out of focus.
They're on the
And
kind
they're-
of wrong side of the screen.
Yeah, they're on the wrong
usually,
side of the
aren't
frame.
they?
So on their own, everything else is out of focus. They're on the wrong side of the screen and they're looking into off-screen space. Those 4 characteristics create something that's a bit oddball, a bit Channel 4.
And it's a bit teenagery of everything is awkward, nothing fits. See? Because he brings up the issue of civil rights.
He has to overtly say it at one point just to say,
what about
hey,
my civil rights?
this is a metaphor
That's
for
an
a
English
thing.
person in Derry saying, what about my civil rights?
And the fact that her response isn't get in the corner, it's just corner. That's the horrible part about it. And he has no choice but to go and do it. Interestingly, Sister Michael is from the south, but Sister Declan is not. It's not a Catholic girls' school staffed by people from Ireland, it's...
That's all over.
Yeah.
Just what available nuns, really, I suppose. Sister Declan likes a wee bit of makeup.
Oh, focus rack, love her.
Focus rack as Claire clocks the sandwich.
In Sister Declan's hand.
It's beautifully timed.
I love a focus rack. If you ever want to if you ever just want to make me weak at the knees, just rack focus.
It's one of the things.
And I think it's the choreography that's involved, isn't it? You have to know exactly where everyone's going to be.
It has to be precisely timed and rehearsed.
Yeah, measurements need to be taken.
Because it is that look on her face as well when the camera hits her, and it's as if she's like, sandwich.
And it's quite a good term, actually, that a camera hits somebody by racking focus to them. Because suddenly they turn from being something that's not a person into being a person. And so just being wrenched into personhood like that is quite a violent action.
Raising of the head.
I just have to write down the exact time at which it becomes apparent that Sister Declan has indeed
died.
So it's at about 1858. Oh, that's about the 5/6 mark, I think. It's really building to a climax, and so that, of course, has to involve a bit of non-diegetic music. Shot durations reducing, so edits become more frequent, which creates this higher rhythm of punctuation, and lots of people moving around as well. But with Saoirse Monica Jackson being the one person who's not moving, it's yet again an indication that Erin is the most normal of the characters in this. And the protagonist has to be just about the most normal, even if she's kooky in a million ways as well. I think Ola's the only character to whom they could have given the job of appearing to handle a corpse. Also, let's just pause on this moment where Erin's halfway out the window and she's looking back into the room. She can see James's penis.
Surely he's holding it though. She's not actually looking at him, she's looking past him.
Much as we generally practice holding it in such ways to make sure that no one can see it.
Yeah.
It's not easy. And the fact that Louise Harland turns Sister Declan's head
when Sister Michael comes in.
That is quite funny. Another focus rack.
It is so funny because Siobhan McSweeney is just the least restrained person and really just not religious, and she's very sweary and she's an activist. As Sister Michael, she just straddles this line between being totally straight-laced but also totally badass at the same time.
And that's just Foley sound, isn't it? Like, that sound is not happening there. Oh, he does have something in his hand.
There is some sort of tube and liquids situation happening over there in the SFX, isn't it? That when you do like a special effect that's actually in camera. But yeah, we've got the Foley sound. The proximity is right up against it, really, isn't it? Of the sound.
Point of audition right there is at James's penis.
It's right at the bin that he's pissing into. It's pretty amplified. And this is a day's worth of bladder.
Of pee,
Oh, the lineup. They look like they're squeezed under about 4 chairs.
I just love that we have parents after parents after parents coming in and going, did you kill that poor nun, wee girls?
The casting's fantastic because Tara Lynn O'Neill, quite similar, who plays Erin's mum, Mary, she has quite an expressive face as well, and she can do quite funny things with it. And she has played quite a lot of straight characters, you know, she's done a lot of drama work. And she's done comedy work as well, but even in the comedies, it's quite a straight up character type thing who'll say funny things, whereas Mary, she just lets loose as Mary. And so she's the first one coming in of the parent group, and it's the face, it's the gawping, it's the eyes, it's the judgment from her face. They're getting burned with this judgment from her face as she walks in.
So all the generation arrives at about 1957, reintroducing conflicts that we left off at the 3 minute 55 second mark that we left off about there, about 1/6 of the way in.
It might be a nice opportunity actually while it's still on Mary and her look, because she's got quite an 80s look, I think. Do you know that drag of one decade into the next?
Yeah.
She's got a sort of 80s, because she's got this quite chunky striped jacket on.
Big, quite loose clothes. Clothes are about a size too big.
Then this jumper with massive flowers, big roses on it, and her hair, it's as if it's not quite a perm, it's like one of those half perms, but it's still quite, or no, she's somebody who probably uses rollers. Oh, actually, isn't there an episode where you do see her in the rollers, isn't there?
Gonna have to rewatch it.
Yeah, she's somebody who does the rollers in her hair, and she keeps her hair quite short and tight and very blonde. But yeah, there's just something about her, because I remember being quite young in the early 90s and there was still a lot of women dressing like that from that drag from the 80s.
Yeah, I was going to say she looks quite 90s, but actually she looks quite 80s.
And like Sarah in contrast beside her, she's got a choker on, which is very 90s. Those were around a lot in the 90s. She's got the hoop earrings, she's got her hair in an up bun thing.
Really tight.
Really tight rows, isn't it? Quite heavy makeup. Whereas Mary's hair is quite old-fashioned in a way, because she's got it kept back by the tight curls. Sarah's got this thing going on where she's got quite a long fitted coat. It looks like quite a fitted green vest jacket and a pair of tight jeans on. So she's quite trendy for the mid-90s. So there's this contrast between the two sisters going on.
Yeah, there's mismatched sister comedy. Very strong stuff.
Between the older and the younger. And then you got Jerry, who's working man. He's a wee bit, tiny bit dishevelled, but not unkempt. He's haggard.
He's been driving all day.
He's been driving all day. He's been getting harangued all day. And for years.
He's not got much hair left.
He's got that tired look. He's got wizened hair. There's hair there, but it's wizened. He's got facial hair. He hasn't shaved for a few days because he hasn't had time. And he doesn't have the self-worth. He's got a shirt with the top unbuttoned. It's a blue shirt as well. Blue collar worker. Got an open jacket on. Normal trousers. He's just a normal working guy. Very harangued. Doesn't need this right now. Grandpa Joe's bringing up the rear here.
With his hat on.
Looking quite fancy with his hat on. He's got a wee baby as well.
This kind of ensemble shot where the previous generation just rocks up, fills the entire frame and goes, what were you doing?
Do you know what? This would be my dream, would be the spin-off where it's them in the 70s, the start of the 70s, and that generation's the girls' age.
That's an excessive amount of crosses on Sister Michael's desk, isn't it?
It's protesting a bit too much, isn't it? There's Jesus everywhere. There's all these books unread everywhere.
And not just crosses, the crucifixes, aren't they? Because there's got Jesus on them. I didn't know about that distinction between a cross and a crucifix. Yeah. And of course, this is Sister Michael who, in a later episode, in response to one of the school kids saying, should we pray for her? She goes, sure, no, what would that do?
Yeah. So that's Deirdre, who we're about to find out is Michelle's mother in her nurse's uniform.
Yeah.
Period. Nurse's uniform.
Somebody at some point in every
Sister's
comedy.
uniform, I think it is actually specifically.
Yeah, with that really prim hair thing on. Somebody at some point has to say the phrase, it's health and safety gone mad, about something which is completely sensible.
Legitimately,
just making you not be blown up. That's it. Sister Michael just sits and spectates on the world. And that's the first indication that that's how Sister Michael's going to rock, isn't it? So she's got this extremely busy shop with masses of stuff on the desk in front of her. But in spite of all of this Catholic regalia, she's sitting behind it just going, well,
I think this is a bit...
I'm not actually going to stand up for Sister Declan.
Imagine that
she nicks people's things.
People have just given her this stuff over the years.
She's got a bell.
And a bell, there's a wee globe. I want to know what's on the other side of this. There's a picture frame here.
Well, given the other pictures we can see in the room, it's probably Jesus.
It might be, but...
Oh, a Mary and Jesus.
It's the only one that's facing to her that we never see. So that's interesting.
And that is, I think, about the fifth Northern Irishism of the episode, isn't it? It's dry rice. And we're going to hear that about 5 or 6 times.
It is a bit much that anyone would be that on feeling in this scenario.
Without me.
She's going back to London, of course.
Right, you're right.
Without me, I didn't know. It is a bit cruel.
And this, I think, is the only time we get to meet Claire's dad.
This is Claire's daddy, yeah. Wee robots.
Whoever this is, he's nailed it.
Well, that's the thing. You get these actors Actually, I don't know who some of these people are. Like, there's some quite big people that I recognise really a lot. I think there's a lot of people here who do a lot of theatre. I don't know them, but like, he's just come in and he's like, well, you've stolen the show for a minute.
Just couldn't keep a straight face. If someone said, right, you have to go on stage, go in front of the camera and deliver the 2 lines, sure the wee robots do all the feckin' work, and then just turn to your right and go, so killing nuns now, is it? You couldn't keep a straight face.
98. Struck down on her brain.
Even though we got a lot of James confronting this world which will refuse to interact with him and which is just impenetrably incomprehensible, we do also have Erin in the same situation as well, because she's saying, look, can everyone please just realise what just happened wasn't our fault? And then we just have everyone consenting to someone going, yes, that was an early death. She hadn't had a good innings at 98.
98. Is this just what nuns do? They're in these jobs till they literally die in them?
That is the basic commentary that the whole series is making is, yeah, if you're a nun, you will die in the job.
Wait, James looks so miserable.
Oh, hang on. Ooh,
What's that?
specific Pope. Her being nearly 98 years of age. She knows that. She's got a hilarious face. That Pope. I don't think that's the current Pope at the time.
The previous one. Because it was Pope John Paul II at the time, because he was Pope for ages. He was Pope throughout most of my early life, I think.
There is a list of popes. 6th century, 7th, 8th. There's been a good couple of hundred of them. 12th, 7th, 9th. There we go. Right, okay. John Paul's predecessor was John Paul I.
Do you think that's who? It's hard to tell, actually, in the... It's like a painting, isn't it? It's not really a photo.
That looks like Pius XI, who was Pope between 1922 and 1939.
Wonder how old this school is. What was it called again? The Immaculate? Something.
Our Lady Immaculate.
Our Lady Immaculate. Maybe they're referring to... Maybe that's a Victorian school building that in this fictional world that we're in.
He was the first sovereign of Vatican City from its creation as an independent state on the 11th of February 1929. 7 years through his pontificate. Because I thought, actually, I mean, I was wrong about thinking that it was a much earlier pope, because I thought it was actually the one who was pope before the First World War, who was Leo the 13th. So not quite that early, the one who was pope between 1878 and 1903, but still, this is a pre-Second Vatican Council pope, whose picture they've got up.
Do you think that's significant then?
They just want to make it look like it's a really dusty...
It's a really old
Catholic
school, and actually she's probably inherited a lot of the stuff that's on that desk.
Having unlit candles in a room, actually, I suppose is quite significant. Now, of course, the hospital aren't saying it was heart failure, but this is one of those suspension of disbelief things about fiction, is that things happen a lot faster in fictional worlds than they do in reality. And again, we're back to where we started, which is teenager going, hang on.
Now I go mad.
Sorry,
yeah.
I've gone mad.
What do you need an investigation for? 98-year-old woman died of natural causes. What more do you need? If you watch James's eyes while Orla's speaking, and the slow emergence of realisation in everybody's face that Orla's reading from Erin's diary again.
Out loud. So there's a kind of circularity to the
I am a child of the crossfire. Is Lisa McGee taking a piss out of herself? Did she maybe write something like that when she was a teenager? Was there writerly girls, writerly people of that time who thought of themselves that way? Because I tried to, when I first saw this, I tried to think, man, did I ever do anything that dweeby?
Boo. Boo, nerd. Yeah, you did.
I am a child of the crossfire. And it's interesting because actually the time that you've spent with these young people, they have, but they haven't got a clue what is really going on, because they think they're so hard done by. And all teenagers think they're hard done by. All teenagers think that life is awful, they're so oppressed, everything's hard work. Whereas actually, I mean, there are kids our age actually planting bombs and actually are insurgents and combatants in the conflict. And they're actually privileged enough or sheltered enough that they haven't been part of that ever. But it's going on around them.
Orla, in the later episode, when there's an orange march going past the house, she does say that she thinks it's cracker.
Yeah, she's quite into it actually. Orla sort of embraces that it's the performative nature of it. She's somebody who likes performance and dance and structure and dressing up and being a bit unusual in society, and it is when you think about it. People in bowler hats and orange sashes. It's not really that far removed from a disco dancing costume, or do you know what I mean? Like there's something very performative by even the way you dress.
We're seconds away from the "we're just going to end the episode in the middle of a sentence" moment. Did you notice that?
We need to watch. See, the credits go by so fast.
We're going to do this.
We've got the 5 girls, including James.
I'll just go back so we don't miss anything. Alright, so 5 girls, fine. But it's the next one that got me.
So there's Ma Mary, Aunt Sarah, Sister Michael, Dad Jerry, Grandpa Joe. They've got the wits, Tommy Tiernan and Naim Nicholhenny.
But the next one,
And then there's wee baby Anna, wee Tina. There's Dennis, David Donnelly, wee Tina, Soldier, Jenny Joyce. Jenny's an interesting character, actually. There's Aisling.
Yeah.
I think that's Jenny's friend.
Yes, yeah.
And yeah, there's all these other characters who do really interesting work. They're smaller characters, but yeah, it wouldn't be complete without them, really. Sister Declan, Deirdre Mallon, and Sean Devlin.
So Sean Devlin played by David Ireland. So kudos to him for being able to deliver that line.
Yeah, and that's Claire's dad, yeah.
Oh, killing nuns now, is it?
Killing nuns now, is it?
Cracking up.
Yeah, Mallon is Michelle's surname. I can't remember now. What's James's surname? Is it different?
Maguire.
That's quite an Irish name, isn't it?
And then we're into the crew.
Anybody in the crew you want to...
They have armourers. Of course they have armourers because there's guns.
There's guns, yeah.
Okay.
Vehicle, there's drone filming, some effects. So there's some VFX there. Maybe that's the Derry Girls, you know, the gable wall painting bit.
Yes.
I think they've had the CG in. They've probably had the CG things out, actually.
Yeah.
Maybe buildings in the distance that weren't there at the time. They've maybe had to just paint them out. So there's a load of people from Northern Ireland screen. There's quite a few exec producers.
So Lisa McGee also being one of the exec producers, presumably because she's part of the production company that they set up to make it.
Michael Lennox. I wonder if I know him. There was somebody called Michael Lennox. I've been getting that wrong. I feel like there was somebody called Michael Lennox on my loose MA cohort, but there's loads of people called Michael Lennox, so it's probably not the specific one that I vaguely remember.
Born and raised in County Antrim, made his first short film in 2008. 2010 made his TV debut with a 30-minute drama called Eclipse, which was an episode for the 8th season of the British TV series Coming Up. Then he went on to the MA in fiction directing at the National Film and Television School in Beaconsfield, which won some awards. It was screened as part of the BAFTA NFTS Stars of Tomorrow event. He collaborated on a feature film Hives. Directed the short film Boogaloo and Graham in 2014.
That sounds familiar.
He's working on his debut feature film A Patch of Fog. And of course... Oh, hang on. This is interesting. This just lists films. His Wikipedia entry, that is. It doesn't mention Derry Girls at all.
Is it the same Michael Lennox?
It's the Michael Lennox that...
Oh, and there's Derry Girls there. That's weird.
Is there. So if you go Michael Lennox, maybe it just takes you to the wrong one. Maybe it takes you to the wrong Michael Lennox.
It could be a wrong link. It's Wikipedia after all. There's some great people who contribute to Wikipedia, but things aren't always the right thing. It's not always the right thing in IMDb either. These aren't exact sciences.
Full cast and crew, Michael Lennox. Those match up with the stuff on Wikipedia. Having watched all these people do, hey, I'm a 15-year-old kid, if you then look at their mugshots they've supplied for everything, these are people who are clearly mid-20s. I think the one for Louisa Harland, she looks like she's 30 in that one, and probably is. But Dylan Llewellyn looks like he's 4.
So do you feel like you've got enough for your diagram?
Oh, I've got enough for 10 diagrams. Small problem though is that I need to make the diagram be a bit wrong.
Yes, so you need a proper version and a fake version.
Yeah.
In the hope that your students will be canny enough to figure it out.
So I've got to do the correct version, then I've got to save that, and save a different version which I will break.
Then feck shit up.
How long does it take to feck up a fucking diagram? Not long at all.
I mean, even just your pencil and paper version is pretty expensive. It's very heavy at the start, especially.
It piles in and then
Yeah.
it settles into its stride.
It just
so there's
settles
acceleration. at the
down,
beginning,
yeah. There's so
Yeah.
much establishing work goes on,
Yeah.
and it's been really fascinating to pick it apart and really look at the details. I mean, it's something we can do with film a lot, and do we necessarily do this with television shows a lot? Maybe actually, what am I saying? I am sure television scholars do this all the time, but I don't know, how closely does anybody ever go into this sort of detail on any of these?
Yeah, whenever I do really close analyses of films, well, I do counting shot durations and stuff, it does tend to attract mild scorn from my film colleagues.
What are you doing that for? Pass yourself on.
A bit of that, yeah. But always affectionate scorn, just, why would you do that?
Oh, it's Andrew at his diagrams again. Why wasn't he just a mathematician? I think it's brilliant to introduce that to students as, look, there are these ways of looking at culture products, and then there are these quite scientific, mathematical ways of looking at cultural products, and these can work together, and that's so exciting.
Yeah.
We can apply science to what we do, and that's really cool. We're nerds, and we should be proud of that.
Yeah. Being able to precisely measure something, being able to answer something with a precise amount, that's not to be sniffed at.
I want to say as well, because comedy, I think, is really undervalued, and I think so many people don't realise how much work goes into comedy. Like, to make something properly funny,
It's a science.
tremendous work.
Surgical precision.
And tremendous trial and error, and getting the right people. It's huge amounts of work, because it's the writing in the first place, but then it's also the actors that you hire, and to trust them to do what they can do. I mean, we don't know how much direction there was for the small things that we were picking up that were not in focus, and that most people watching these things will not notice them. The stuff with Orla's sweet bracelet, how many people are going to have twigged on that she was doing those really subtle movements? And that those little interactions, and those, you can see the internal monologue going on. That's, oh, I really want to, oh, better not have a sweetie. You can see her thinking it through, and that's just one of 5 main people, and that's not all of the people. Like, as we mentioned, the bit parts, you would say, but they're more significant than that, because it's people's parents coming in, and they are very occasional characters, but those actors do so much with those characters when they're there, when they're on screen. Because I think we see Claire's dad again in season 2. We definitely see Deirdre again, Michelle's mum, and Erin and Orla's family unit, or the central unit. But you're going to see a lot more extended characters. You're going to see neighbours. There's going to be Fanula from the Chippy. There's going to be really well-rounded characters who are only in it for 1 episode ever.
On naming, we've got the ongoing joke of all the nuns have male names, but then there's the joke of a lot of the adult characters who they keep coming up against have pantomimically Irish names, even though they're Northern Irish. They're essentially indistinguishable from citizens of the Republic. And Fanula from the Chippy is a prime example of that, isn't she?
Fairly common name.
It is.
Yeah. Yes.
Spelt.
It depends. There's different ways. The way I know is Fionnghuala.
Half of those letters are unneeded.
So, but that's the problem with Anglicisation, because they have use, they have inflections, because learning the bit of Irish now, I'm learning that, but yeah, there are a lot of letters that are dropped. There's a word, it's spelt mace, but you say ma. It is confusing, but it has meaning in the written language.
Because Fanula, right? F-I-N-U-L-A.
Yeah, and that's the Anglicisation that you're
Fanula.
imposing on it. And that's why there are people whose name, who have names like Brona, where letters are dropped out of it.
I suppose we can hardly talk because
Owen has been anglicised.
we still keep a lot of GH spellings on words where we
But
don't
they're not
say
used,
the GH
they're silent.
anymore. Yeah, so plough, I suppose, is a prime example of that.
Because that would have been plough before, would it?
Yeah, all those GH sounds, GH spellings corresponded to a at least pronunciation, which is why
Anyway,
some persist.
yeah.
Anyway,
No, it's useful exercise, and we'll see how your students get on with this.
they'll hate me, but that's a perfect way to start.
You're giving them options for how to approach studying cultural products, and that's really important. You've been listening to Audiovisual Cultures with special guest co-host Andrew Shail. This episode was hosted, recorded, edited and produced by Paula Blair. The music is Common Ground by Airtone, licensed under a Creative Commons Non-Commercial 3.0 licence and is available for download on ccmixter.org. If you like what we do, please help us meet production and distribution costs with a regular payment to liberapay.com/PEA Blair or one-off donations to paypal.me/PEA Blair. Episodes are released every other Wednesday. Please rate, share and subscribe on your chosen platform to help others find the show. Visit audiovisualcultures.wordpress.com or follow AV Cultures Pod on Instagram and AV Cultures on Twitter and Facebook for more information and useful links. Thanks so much for listening and catch you next time.